I mean, think about almost every blockbuster movie you've ever seen or, every bedtime story you were told as a kid. There is always that climactic moment.
Right, absolutely. The big showdown.
Right. The White Knight finally slays the dragon.
Huh?
Or the evil empire just crumbles into dust. And the hero wipes the sweat from their brow, the music swells, and you get this like profound sense of relief because the threat is permanently gone.
Yeah, we are completely conditioned from birth to believe in the absolute finality of that victory.
We really are. We love the comforting idea that at the end of the day, justice will definitively defeat evil.
It's deeply ingrained in us. I mean, when we watch the news or when we participate in social causes, we crave that ultimate resolution. We want to believe the moral arc of the universe doesn't just bend toward justice, but that it actually crosses a literal finish line where evil just packs up and ceases to exist.
Exactly. But what if that finish line is just an illusion? Today's deep dive is going to completely dismantle that comfort zone for you.
It really is.
We're looking at a deeply provocative framework that claims, point blank, that justice can never defeat evil.
Which is a heavy statement.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And this isn't just someone complaining that the world is unfair. We're going to map out an intricate, honestly mind-bending cosmic logic that argues this endless conflict between good and evil isn't, a glitch in our system. It is the very engine of the system itself.
Yeah, and if you're tuning in expecting some cynical political manifesto, you're going to be very surprised. This is actually a sweeping exploration of physics, of fundamental human psychology, and ultimately the structural blueprint of the cosmos.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to even begin to understand why justice supposedly can't win, we have to look at the source text for today.
Right.
It's this 2019 essay by a writer named Xiu Feng, titled Justice Can Never Defeat Evil, which was later translated by Kinyu and edited by Bandy.
Yeah.
We have to see how it applies the cold, hard laws of physics to something as abstract as human morality.
Which is such a wild pivot.
It is. The fundamental premise here is that the universe basically operates as a zero-sum game.
Right, so if you think back to, high school physics, you might remember Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
The classic rule.
Exactly. The logic we are exploring today takes that mathematical principle and maps it directly onto morality. The idea is that positive and negative energies in the entire universe must sum up to exactly zero.
So justice and evil aren't treated as simply a right choice and a wrong choice. They're treated as acting and reacting forces.
Yes. They are completely equal in magnitude, but opposite in direction. The author describes them as twin brothers.
Meaning where there is justice, there simply must be evil. It's the law of the unity of opposites, right? Like where there is day, there is night. Or without death, there's no life.
What's fascinating here is how this completely shifts the paradigm of how we view reality. I mean, we normally think of justice as a purifying force.
Like a cleaning product.
Yes, exactly. Like something that's supposed to scrub the dirt out of the fabric of society until only the clean fabric remains. But this framework suggests that evil isn't the dirt on the fabric.
It's part of the fabric itself.
Right. Evil is woven into the very threads, right alongside justice. If you pull the dark thread out, the whole garment just disintegrates.
The essay actually uses a really vivid ecological analogy to drive this home. Imagine a perfect ecosystem. If you suddenly decided that carnivores were evil and you wiped out all the wolves.
The whole system changes instantly.
Yeah. The herbivores, like the deer, they don't just live happily ever after in some peaceful utopia. The entire ecosystem collapses. The vegetation gets overgrazed, disease spreads, and it becomes incredibly difficult for the herbivores to exist at all.
Without the threat, the system dies, because the pressure, the constant threat of the predator, is precisely what maintains the vital balance of that specific reality.
It's wild to think about.
The tension literally is the life force.
But I have to stop you right there,
Uh-huh.
because I'm struggling a bit with the implications of this.
Okay.
If justice and evil are truly just equal and opposite forces, like day and night, doesn't that make striving for justice completely pointless?
Yeah.
Does this imply that fighting for what is right is the equivalent of standing in your backyard and yelling at the sun to stop setting?
I get that. That is the exact trap a lot of people fall into when they first encounter this kind of systemic thinking. But the argument isn't that evil is a good thing, or that you shouldn't prefer the warmth of the day to the freezing cold of the night.
Okay.
It's about structural necessity. I mean, if day permanently defeated night, you wouldn't have a better, brighter world. You would have a dead, scorched planet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
So the pushback isn't saying, don't fight.
Yeah.
It's asking you to realize that the tension between the two is what generates the energy of existence. You fight for justice not to permanently eradicate evil, but because the act of fighting keeps the universe's heart beating.
So if this zero-sum physics is the underlying theory, how does this eternal tension actually play out in the messy reality of human history?
That's the big question.
Because if you look back at the timeline of mankind, you really have to ask a blunt question. When has justice ever definitively conquered evil?
And the historical record is pretty clear on that. The answer is basically never.
Never. It's an endless cycle. And the imagery the author uses to describe this historical struggle is so visceral.
Oh, it's intense.
Yeah, it doesn't describe some civilized boxing match where someone eventually gets knocked out and the referee raises the winner's hand. It describes justice and evil as two evenly matched people locked together, fighting, beating each other, and just rolling around in the dirt.
Right. Sometimes justice gets the upper hand and is on top.
But eventually, the momentum shifts, and evil rolls over and pins justice underneath. Neither of them ever stays on top permanently.
It is a state of perpetual wrestling, but, a wrestling match that goes on for thousands of years requires an enormous amount of fuel. If we accept that the cycle is eternal, we have to look at what gives evil the energy to constantly fight back, to constantly roll over and pin justice down again after a defeat. Like, what is the fertile soil that allows it to regenerate so quickly?
Here's where it gets really interesting. The most fertile soil for evil, according to this framework, is human greed.
Greed.
But it goes way beyond the basic idea that, people like money. The author maps out this escalating ladder of desire that is honestly terrifying when you apply it to real life.
It hits very close to home.
It really does. I mean, think about the last time you got a raise or achieved a major goal. How long did it take before that new reality just felt normal and you were already looking at the next step up?
It's usually an incredibly short window. The target is always moving because human desire isn't some container that can be filled. It is an infinite void.
Exactly. The logic asks you to scale that up. Is $100 million enough to satisfy the human heart? No.
Not at all.
10 billion. Still no. 100 billion, never enough. But then material wealth stops being the currency. Once you're impossibly rich, the greed mutates. You want honor and prestige.
And once you secure honor, you want actual power over others. Because power offers a totally different kind of satiation. It offers control over the variables that threaten you.
Right. And it still doesn't stop there. Once you have power, you want to control the entire world.
Yeah, the escalation is wild.
And after controlling the world, you want to control the universe. The ultimate kind of absurd destination of human greed is that you want to be the greatest creator yourself. You basically want to be God.
And that progression is crucial. This isn't just a basic critique of materialism or consumerism. It is a profound observation about our internal architecture. Because that pit of desire is bottomless, it guarantees that the wrestling match between good and evil will never, ever run out of energy.
Because the fuel source is infinite.
Exactly. As long as humans possess this infinite capacity for desire, evil will always have the psychological soil it needs to regenerate.
Okay, but this immediately makes you wonder, if human greed is this destructive, bottomless pit that causes so much endless conflict and suffering, why are we built this way?
Right. Why the design flaw?
Yeah. Why are we biologically or spiritually wired to be so insatiably greedy? There has to be a mechanical reason for it. And this is where logic takes a massive turn from human psychology into, full-blown cosmology.
Yes, this is the pivot where the scale of the universe really opens up. To explain why we are fundamentally flawed in this specific way, the framework introduces a concept called the dynamic balance mechanism of life in the universe.
The dynamic balance mechanism. It sounds like something you'd find in an advanced engineering textbook for building galaxies.
It really does. It represents the immutable laws and principles that maintain the survival of all life and basically manage the magnificent up and down plots of existence.
Right.
But to understand it, we have to zoom way out. We are no longer just talking about Earth. We're talking about a cosmological map that contains 20 parallel worlds and 36-dimensional spaces.
Wait, 20 parallel worlds and 36-dimensional spaces.
Wow.
That is a staggering level of cosmic bureaucracy. Why would a universe need 36 dimensions?
Well, think of it as a massive, complex filtration system. If energy cannot be destroyed, and consciousness is a form of energy, the universe has to manage a near infinite amount of life forces.
You can't just have one big bucket for everyone.
Right. These 36 dimensions represent different vibrational levels. They're different realities designed to contain and filter souls based on their level of enlightenment or density. And within this massive, multi-layered architecture, three specific realms are highlighted: heaven, hell, and the human world.
So to make this massive abstract structure relatable to you listening,
Yeah.
there's a really grounded political analogy the author uses.
Oh, this part is great.
Yeah, imagine a country. At the very peak of the government, there is only one president. Below the president, there are layers of managers, hundreds of senators, then thousands of local officials, then tens of thousands of bureaucrats.
Right, the classic pyramid structure of power.
Exactly. And at the very bottom, forming the massive base of this pyramid, you have the common people. And to keep this entire pyramid standing, the common people at the bottom are constantly trying to climb upwards.
They want better lives, they want stability.
They want to reach the top. But the people above them, who already have power, are constantly pushing downwards to protect their own positions. So it's this endless, exhausting friction of climbing from the bottom and pressing from the top. And the assertion here is that the reality constituted by this endless climbing and pressing is the dynamic balance mechanism in action.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this political pyramid maps exactly onto the cosmos. People in hell, the lowest tier, desperately want to move up to heaven, just like the common people want to be the president.
But logistically, that's impossible.
Right. The peak of the pyramid cannot support the base. So the universe faces an enormous logistical crisis. How do you manage this cosmic population? How do you keep a massive infinite number of lives from flooding through the gates of heaven and collapsing the highest dimensions?
And the answer to that logistical problem is an absolute gut punch. Our world is explicitly defined as a transit station.
A transit station.
Yes, it is a designated containment zone situated right between heaven and hell. It is quite literally a purposeful battlefield where justice and evil are supposed to endlessly fight.
It's essentially a buffer zone.
It is. The most effective way to contain a massive number of lives outside of heaven is to make people in the human world greedy and unenlightened. That is the huge secret here. We aren't greedy because of some random evolutionary mistake.
No, we are greedy by design.
Exactly. Keeping humans trapped in this infinite void of desire, forcing them to endlessly wrestle in the dirt between good and evil, is the universe's ultimate crowd control mechanism. If we were all perfectly enlightened, satisfied, and purely good, we would all ascend at once, and heaven would be completely overrun.
It's crowd control on a cosmic scale.
But hold on, I struggle with this immensely. Because if you tell people they're biologically and spiritually designed to be greedy just to keep heaven from overcrowding, doesn't that just give bad actors a cosmic excuse to be terrible?
How do you mean?
Like, if I'm a corrupt billionaire exploiting thousands of people, couldn't I just read this and say, hey, don't blame me. I'm just doing my part for the dynamic balance mechanism. I'm providing the friction the universe needs.
Oh, right. That is a very dangerous but very common misinterpretation. You're confusing structural necessity with personal enlightenment. Yes, the universe requires the system of the transit station to have friction, but your personal journey as an individual consciousness is about how you navigate that friction.
Okay, so the billionaire's not off the hook.
Not at all. The billionaire exploiting people is deeply entrenched in the mud of the transit station. They are performing a function for the universe, sure, but they're also guaranteeing that they remain trapped in the lowest, heaviest dimensions of that 36-dimensional space. The system needs friction, but your goal, if you want peace, is to transcend the friction, not revel in it.
Ah, that makes sense. It's like saying a prison needs guards and inmates to function as a prison, but that doesn't mean you should aspire to be an inmate just to keep the building open.
Exactly. The human world is a sorting mechanism.
But this brings up a profound emotional hurdle. If you're listening to this and you consider yourself a good person who fights for justice, you might be feeling incredibly defeated right now.
I wouldn't blame them.
Right. If our world is deliberately designed as a brutal transit station, and evil must exist just to manage cosmic population control, why bother? Shouldn't we be completely hopeless?
You would think so. Seeing the mechanics of the Matrix usually makes people cynical, but the framework actually anticipates this reaction. It explicitly asks the reader, once you see through this reality, should righteous people be pessimistic? Is this dynamic mechanism actually unreasonable?
See, as humans, we constantly crave a perfect utopia. We think a world where it's all justice, zero evil, and everyone gets exactly what they want would be the ultimate expression of benevolence.
We do.
But this logic challenges our entire definition of benevolence. It argues that wishing for a universe that is entirely heaven, with no hell and no struggle, is fundamentally irrational.
This raises an important question about perspective. We define benevolence as the total absence of suffering. If nothing hurts, it's good.
Naturally.
But the universe doesn't operate on human emotions. The universe defines benevolence as the continuation of the system. A dynamic system simply cannot survive without tension. To illustrate why a pure, suffering-free utopia would actually be a catastrophic disaster, the author uses a highly bizarre, but honestly incredibly effective ecological thought experiment.
So what does this all mean in practice? Well, imagine a scenario where every single insect, bird, beast, domestic animal, fish, shrimp, snake, and scorpion in the world is suddenly transformed into a human being.
Just instantly.
Instantly. Billions and billions of creatures are elevated to the highest status on Earth. No more food chain, no more predators, just billions of humans everywhere.
It's an apocalyptic image.
It's horrifying. And the question posed is, can human beings survive any longer in that scenario? And the obvious answer is absolutely not.
Not a chance.
If everything were elevated to the highest status simultaneously, the ecosystem would instantaneously collapse. We would devour all the resources in days. We would starve. We would suffocate each other. The system would violently destroy itself.
Right.
This stark realism really forces us to ask ourselves if we've actually thought through the physics of what a completely perfect and equal world would actually require.
And that is the core revelation. The dynamic balance mechanism, as brutal, exhausting, and unfair as it seems from our tiny perspective inside this transit station, is the only thing that allows life to exist at all. Without the climbing and the pressing, without the rolling around in the dirt between justice and evil, the entire 36-dimensional structure would literally collapse under the weight of its own perfection.
It would be crushed.
Totally crushed by the sheer density of a static reality.
So remarkably, this essay doesn't end on a note of despair. I mean, it doesn't pretend the human world is a fun place to be. It explicitly acknowledges that the sea of bitterness is boundless. But then it asks, is there a way to be optimistic?
And the answer it provides is a resounding yes.
Yes. But it is a very cryptic kind of optimism.
Very cryptic.
It doesn't give you like a 10-step self-help guide to fixing your life. The final thought simply promises that the person from heaven will lead you to find a way to be optimistic.
Which is such a fascinating phrase.
What does it even mean?
Well, the person from heaven represents outside intervention. It implies guidance from someone or a consciousness that has already successfully navigated the 36 dimensions. They aren't going to show you how to permanently destroy evil on Earth, because as we've established, that would destroy the Earth.
Right, they aren't going to help you break the transit state.
Exactly. They are going to show you how to navigate your way through the transit station. True optimism, in this cosmic blueprint, doesn't come from believing you're going to permanently eradicate evil. True optimism comes from understanding the grand design, accepting your current place within this massive dynamic balance mechanism, and seeking an enlightenment that transcends the endless wrestling match.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. Let's take a breath and look at what we've unpacked for you. We started with the pretty jarring idea that justice can never defeat evil.
Right.
But we discovered that this isn't a surrender to bad guys. It's a recognition of the physics of morality, where positive and negative forces sum to zero.
And we explored how human greed, that bottomless pit of desire for money, power, and ultimate control, acts as the infinite fuel for the eternal wrestling match of human history.
And we mapped out a massive cosmological structure of 20 parallel worlds and 36-dimensional spaces. We realized that Earth is just a transit station, right? It's a deliberate containment zone where our endless conflicts basically function as a crowd control mechanism to keep the higher dimensions from collapsing under the weight of too much perfection.
Yeah.
Wanting a world with only justice is like wanting a world where every scorpion suddenly becomes a human. It sounds beautifully benevolent until you realize it would destroy absolutely everything.
And that leaves us with a profound shift in perspective. If we return to that image we started with, the white knight slaying the dragon, the desperate desire for that final credits-rolling victory we have to fundamentally reevaluate our role in the story. You aren't here to end the story. You are here to participate in it.
It completely changes how you view every conflict in your life.
It really does. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you step back out into the world. If the struggle between justice and evil is truly an eternal wrestling match, built into the very physics of a 36-dimensional universe just to keep the cosmos in balance, how does that change the way you choose your battles tomorrow?
That's the real question.
When you stand up for what is right, will you fight expecting a final, ultimate victory where your enemies are permanently destroyed? Or will you fight simply because you understand that your active participation in the struggle, your willingness to push back and wrestle in the dirt, is the very heartbeat that keeps the universe alive?